official. Former Vice President Joe Biden has officially been elected President of the United States, making Donald Trump the first one-term president in quite a while. So there's a lot of information to dig into right now. There's a lot of things to take a look at. But at this point in time, it becomes apparent that Joe Biden has been elected President of the United States. He has reached the 270 electoral votes necessary to become the President of the United States. This is going after the state of Pennsylvania has been called for the former Vice President. At this point in time, they've called Pennsylvania for former Vice President Biden, where he now holds a lead of over half of 1%, and 98% of the vote is reporting it is unlikely that President Trump will be able to go back and take over the victory in the state of Pennsylvania. At this point in time, that is what this race is being called. And coming January in 2021, Joe Biden will take control of the White House. The Democrats, this is a big victory for them. They've been fighting for it over the last couple of hours. I mean, it's become less and less apparent the reasons and the pathways for Trump presidency. And at this point with Pennsylvania, all hopes are gone for President Trump. He still probably could win in other places. However, that's not going to be enough. Even if he sweeps the rest of this map, Biden would still win by a couple of electoral votes. So, I mean, this is a very big development on this election. Former Vice President Biden wins. I mean, and this race and this election truly wasn't a big surprise. All throughout the election, it became clear it was likely Donald Trump's election to lose. Again, Donald Trump still had his pathways. He still did have the chance. But going into this election, Biden was the favorite. And that favorability when it came to this electoral map, it really paid off for Biden. And it was a closer race than the Democrats expected. They did not expect this electoral map to look like this. Neither did the Republicans. I think the Republicans, in their eyes, they thought they were more likely to lose in Florida or North Carolina than they were in Georgia. So that general feeling of the electoral map really came to show. And, at this point in time, it gives us Biden is the next president. So that is a very, very big thing at this point in time. And he essentially doing so by going and winning in Pennsylvania. And that race in Pennsylvania is what's giving him that victory at this point in time. And just take a look at it. If the counties that are left, there's not much vote left. And even the vote that's left, it's mostly counties that are probably going to go to the Democrats. And yeah, overall, this race has been a long one. And I mean, America now finally knows who their next president is going to be. This is something that a lot of people have been waiting for. I mean, the last 5 days, about 5 days have been very suspenseful. And, I think Americans, they finally can find out who their president is, which is good for the country as a whole, as we're not living on this iceberg politically where we don't know what's going to happen, where we don't know what already happens. So it's already official. So right now, I mean, in Pennsylvania is truly what's giving the victory to former Vice President Biden. So, even though I'm reading in the chat right now, there's still recounts to be had. There's all these things that could happen in certain states. At this point, it's not going to affect this race. CNN, who hasn't called Nevada, who hasn't called Arizona, who hasn't called Georgia, North Carolina, already have the map going for Biden. I mean, the electoral map wasn't that hard for Biden to go through. I mean, he just really had to flip the industrial Midwest, which, what did he end up doing? He flipped the industrial Midwest. If we take a look at the CNN projections here and zoom out of Pennsylvania, we would be able to tell that one of the biggest reasons that we see here is that Biden was able to flip Wisconsin, flip Michigan, flip Wisconsin, and at this point, it's likely that he's going to flip Arizona and he's going to flip Georgia. Who knows? There's still recount and there's still some military ballots left. This race in Georgia is extremely, extremely close. Only a very small amount of votes are still missing. Again, this electoral map looks very weird. So Biden is the winner at this point in time. I thought my final prediction was wrong. I thought that there was a possibility the president, and we saw that red mirage. And to be honest with you, I mean, on election night, it looked good for the president. Now, I think it also just happens to be a closer election than we thought. I mean, even though at this point in time, Pennsylvania is going by half a percentage point, Biden won there. But that's not the margins that Democrats and the pollsters were expecting. Pollsters and the Democrats were probably expecting to win there by 8 points, 7 points, 4 points at the end. And generally speaking, those margins were off a little bit. Not a little bit, by a lot. But at this point in time, Biden is the next president. So I want to see what a Biden White House looks like. I want to see how that happens. And I mean, Kamala Harris is now making history. Kamala Harris is now officially the first Black and the first woman vice president in the United States. That is a very, very big accomplishment for the Democrats, as they are, like Hillary Clinton said in 2016, one step closer to shattering that glass ceiling. And for Kamala Harris, I mean, this sets her up very well. If Joe Biden doesn't run in 2024, and if Democratic morale and if the Democrats are still popular by then, I think it could be said that Kamala Harris could easily be the successor to Joe Biden, take over the Democratic Party. So I want to say something right now about this comment that I see right here. Hopefully Trump concedes the election, but it's going to take him some time to accept the defeat. So, I think at this point in time, it's something that we definitely have to take a look at. And I think he's probably going to definitely take that and he's going to acknowledge that he lost the election. He's going to have to. I don't think he doesn't want to get dragged out of the White House. And just frankly, I think that within the next couple of hours, pretty soon, Trump would probably concede if it looks like all hopes are lost. The Democrats are probably already claiming victory. Joe Biden is set to speak later today, and that is when they're going to be declaring victory. So, yeah, you're missing the fact that officially it's unclear if Biden won California. Well, no, officially those states have been called. And for example, it's not, they don't have all the percent reporting, but just basing it off the numbers, it's impossible for at this point in time for Trump to catch up. Now, I will say this. President Trump had a very, very good run on the last couple of days of the election. I mean, and there's some states that are surprisingly closer. I mean, at this point in time, Illinois is going by less than 15 points. That makes it a likely state. If you take a look at New York, this state is 20%. It wasn't as big of a blowout for Biden. Like, of course, it's still a blowout, but President Trump was able to make inroads with certain groups of voters and gain a lot of support. I mean, take a look at Florida. He won this state by over 3.5%. In Ohio, he won here by a margin of around 8%. In Iowa, he won by a margin of almost 9%. You see, the president made inroads during this election. It's not like it was a very big blowout for Biden. Electorally, we might have Biden to get to 300 electoral votes. And at this point in time, it's a very big victory for the Democrats. Now, the Senate is going to be a big thing for the Republicans. I think their saving grace right now might be the United States Senate, where they have overperformed. These races in the United States Senate is probably going to stop the Democrats from doing much. So if you're a Republican out there, the Senate is looking good for you guys. So, essentially, you're looking at a race in the Senate that might put the Biden administration or this Biden administration to be in the check of things. It's not gonna be this huge blowout where they have all the power and they can get truly anything done. Now, I mean that's kind of always that's one of the things that's always been kind of counterproductive for the United States government. It's that because of the Senate, because of the White House, usually they're not elected by the same people. It's going to be very counterproductive. Nothing much is going to be done. However, I must say that at this point in time, the presidency has gone to Biden, and those ideas, those things that Biden fought for, are going to be continued to fought for during this election. A lot of his campaign promises that he made, including raising taxes, including the Green New Deal, including all these different things, which for some people it's amazing, for some people it's horrible. Those things are coming. So you have to think about that. And I think if you're a Republican out there, please do not be sore losers. Again, I understand. It's something that happens every election. In 2016, Hillary Clinton supporters were extremely sore losers. And I think some Trump supporters are going to be sore losers at this point in time. That is just a fact at this point. And again, it's understandable. When you lose an election, it's always going to be sore. And the emphasis that the Republican Party put on this election, they put the emphasis that this election was going to be one of the most important in our lifetime. We have to take that into consideration. This election was supposed to be such an important one, and I think at this point in time, we're seeing the Democrats win. Now, what does this mean for the future? Now, I think that 2024 is not going to be such a solid lock for the Democrats now. Again, you have to take in consideration that when you're president, a lot of things can go wrong. And I just think that like the country, this election was close, at least at an electoral level. And throughout a Biden presidency, it's going to become clear what these voters in the Midwest want. They're going to give the Democrats another chance. Now, some of them, it might go better for them or it could get worse. Their current situations when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to the economy, those different things. But I think at this point in time, it's going to be those states in 2024 that's not going to be as big of margins for the Democrats as expected. So, Biden won at this point, and there could be recounts, and of course, the Republicans are still going on this voter fraud thing. Now, I think at this point in time, that's something that it's going to have to get investigated. We're not going to know immediately. We're going to have to wait. And the chances are it's a little bit exaggerated on the Republicans' part. But the election is going to have some recounts. In Georgia, especially. None of these races fall like really that close, except Georgia at this point, which is looking like a nail biter. The only state where a recount might do something is Georgia. So that's where you're looking at. So Biden is officially the winner. So there is no evidence of voter fraud. And if you watched yesterday's live stream, I did two voter fraud two live streams. We talked about voter fraud, and we discussed of the different things that truly Biden really wasn't. The possibilities for the Democrats to pull something like that off are low, and I think it's just a way to take the election to court and delay the results. But I think at this point in time, Biden is the winner. And if you're a Republican out there, accept the results. The same way Democrats are going to have to accept that you guys lost the Senate. And again, there is no way that both sides cannot claim this was a wave election, because truly this was not a wave election. On the presidency, it was a slight Democratic effect, a Democratic ripple, if you will. And then on the congressional side, down ballot races, Republicans performed very, very well. They gained seats in the House, and some high-profile Democrats had very important races in 2018 that helped get them on the House majority. Some of them lost races. Take a look at Abby Finkenauer in Iowa. Take a look at Joe Cunningham in South Carolina. Take a look at Debbie Mercoselle Powell and Donna Shalala down in Florida. These are representatives and congressmen that really gave the Democrats the victory in 2018. Those people some of them are gone. And in 2022, if the Republicans can campaign correctly, if they can get more of these races, they might be able to take over the House. And, at this point in time, it comes into question again. We now have to think of their perspective of how the future of American politics will be like under a Biden presidency. Because, again, remember, when you're president or when you're not president, you can say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that, right? But truly, when you think about it, like in the future and when it comes to the next election, we're going to live in the world in the same way the Republicans took a hit, the Democrats are probably going to take hits. Now, the severity of that, who knows? But at this point, it's more likely than not that we're going to see that happen. So, at this point in time, Biden is the official winner of the 2020 presidential election. A lot of people they put a lot of faith into President Trump, and I was reading the chat right now. The Republicans were definitely, and I agree with you guys, the Republicans were definitely overconfident of their chances at victory. And at the last couple of days, as an analyst, as an independent source, I thought the Republicans had a chance of winning the election. Why? Because their excitement and all the enthusiasm, which sometimes that gut feeling that you have, you're seeing those things. It really does pay off. At this point in time, the only states I'm getting wrong is Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia. Again, there could be more states. I mean, I think Georgia, it could definitely be, my prediction could be right. Arizona, it's not looking too likely, but I mean, Pennsylvania have officially gotten it wrong as they've called the race there. So, I think that at this point in time, that's what we're looking at. If I had to predict, right now where many states would go, I think North Carolina is going to go to Trump. I don't know why they haven't called that race. There's like more. There's an insane amount of votes they that have already been counted. There's a big lead and very very small difference. So I think at this point, or not difference, but votes to still be counted. So I think Trump's going to win in North Carolina. Georgia's going to be a nail biter. I think Biden's going to end up edging out there by a couple votes. And by a couple votes, I'm like literally saying like 500 votes, or 1,000 votes, like that general range. Arizona's probably going to stick with Biden, by around, I would say at this point, 30,000 votes. And Nevada's probably going to go to Biden. They should be calling that pretty soon. At this point in time, I just think that it's looking likely, more likely than not, that Biden is going to carry a lot of these remaining states. Some of these states, I mean, they really flipped a lot. I mean, from election night, you saw pretty much Trump leading in all these places. He was leading in Nevada. He was leading in North Carolina. He was leading in Georgia. All of that really changed. So, yeah, that is something that, definitely has to be analyzed because, this election is one that was, I mean, it was and we have to respect the results of this election. As an independent, as Democrats, as Republicans, whether you lose the Senate, whether you lose the House, whether you lose the presidency, the results of this election are what they are. So, I think one thing that we really came to see is President Trump was overconfident with this election. I mean, he was pumping up his victory when, maybe sometimes it wasn't that close, and I think the Republicans definitely overestimated their chances. I really want to share a comment right here that I'm seeing on the chat right now, and it's really funny right now. And I remember this, like, I was watching TikTok the other day. I don't know if you guys have watched TikTok, but there was a meme about the Zootopia, about the count in Nevada. So, George, I definitely do remember that, and that was like a really moment because, again, in this tense election, I mean, counting the votes during this election was such a tense process that we're all sitting at the edge of our seats asking ourselves, like, when are we going to know for sure? When are we going to know who wins the election? All of that really came into account, and I think we really all felt that way. And I mean, this election, a lot of things really depend on it. I mean, it depends now on how the economy is going to go. It depends on COVID-19 and what pathways we're taking. The election has massively changed, and it's going to massively change the future of America at this point in time. So yeah, and there is a couple of things that we're gonna have to definitely take a look at. And yeah, at this point in time, officially Trump has become a one-term president. Now, I think Trump's fall from grace has been different, if we could call it that. His fall from grace is a little different to that of Bush. It's a little bit different of that of Carter. It's different of that of Ford. It's different. I think with those presidents, we saw, Bush was pretty much, Ross Perot really screwed him up there. But generally speaking, I think Donald Trump's fall from grace was COVID-19. If COVID-19 wasn't here, I think Donald Trump would have easily been reelected. That is definitely like a fact that we must understand. And like, for example, like if the polls were wrong, I mean, and they were off by a couple points. If back then, before the pandemic, the polls had President Trump ahead in Wisconsin and narrowly behind in Michigan and Pennsylvania, how would have this election turned out? And if the economy continued to soar the way that it was, how would have it turned out? So, at this point in time, I think this COVID-19 crisis really was the nail in the coffin for President Trump. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. So this election really, for some people it's a shocker, for some are not. I mean, there was Republicans who legitimately were saying they were like 99% confident that they're going to win the election, and they were not even joking and they were not even exaggerating. As the same way that there were Democrats that were 100% sure they were going to win. Now, we saw that on election night, how both parties were completely crapping their pants because God, it looked like the race was going to be a lot closer. I mean, the Republicans, they freaked out a little bit, and they're filing all these lawsuits. They're filing all these different things. So that is something you have to take into account. Like both sides, they were shocked, I guess, in both ways how close this election is. I mean, and history has been made. The oldest president has been elected, as well as the first female vice president. So I think at this point in time, it is something that we definitely have to take a look at. So someone in the chat right now, Riser, is asking, why haven't they called North Carolina? That is a stupendous question, and I ask myself that as well. I mean, North Carolina has been leading for Trump for a couple of days at this point, consistently. They've counted more votes. I don't know why they haven't called it. We should be seeing a projection from that state, though, fairly soon. Definitely within the next couple of hours, we should be definitely seeing a call from the state, and we should be seeing that soon, definitely. And I think at this point in time, President Trump still has time in the presidency. It's really not that much, but he has 3 months to get anything last minute that he wants to get through. Now, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I can definitely see that right now. For example, Amy Coney Barrett was a big victory for Trump, and if they would have waited, and they would have, if the Republicans were truly confident that they could have won the election, they probably wouldn't have confirmed Amy Coney Barrett in the time frame that they did. Which, I mean, at this point in time, for the Republicans, and if you're a conservative out there, I think that you should be happy with the fact that Amy Coney Barrett has gotten confirmed. For the Democrats, that must sting a lot right now because they just won the election. And who knows, if they could have just waited a little bit more and they could have stopped the process, maybe they could have chosen the next Supreme Court justice. So, I think at this point in time, the election has officially been called. So Biden supporters out there, you have a reason to celebrate. Democrats have a reason to celebrate, as you guys have officially reached the White House again after an Obama presidency and after a change in America's political system in a way where they didn't want more establishment Washington politicians. They wanted to take a look at how America would run with a different source of people. And I'm going to say something out there for people that support President Trump. If you think that America is going to be a complete disaster within the next couple of years, that's not going to happen. I mean, in the same way, there is uncertainty when Trump got elected. When Trump got first elected, I think in everyone's mind, even the people that voted for him, were asking themselves, how would this administration work? How would it look like? Right? We're asking ourselves those questions. But remember, American political system, even though a victory could seem such a progressive victory, such a big change, both how Donald Trump and Biden are probably going to change and when they won their very big prospective elections, the change is not going to be radical, at least not overnight in the first 1 or 2 terms. Now, it's different if the Democrats are consistently winning the White House. So that uncertainty isn't coming. So that is something that we have to take into account. And, that is something that is very interesting. Will Biden speak today, and do you think Trump will eventually concede? So, of course, I think President Trump is going to have to eventually concede, move on with his life. I mean, and if he doesn't concede, he's just going to get dragged out of there. So, one, he has to concede, and he's probably going to do so. The question is when. I think he's going to wait until, the judges, literally put him down and say, no, I mean, you can't do anything else. That is when I think President Trump will end up conceding. Now, I think Biden's going to declare victory today. I think maybe within the next couple of hours, we should be seeing former Vice President Biden be declaring victory in Delaware. So again, that is something that's what we're looking at right now. So that is something that is interesting. So I mean, and let's just discuss this race. I mean, was this race truly a big blowout for the Democrats? No. It was a close race. So that is something that we definitely have to understand. I mean, this is nowhere near a blowout. Even if you wanted to paint it like that, it's just not the facts. Now, it's a closer race. And I mean, the Republicans really did a good job at narrowing down the race. And right now I'm seeing in the chat right now that a lot of people are claiming that there is fraud. With the fraud, it just depends. We have to have more information. You could claim, but I mean, you also have to think about this. Why would the Republicans just randomly go into court, start complaining about these things? Why? Because I mean, going to court and fighting in court is nowhere, like, it's not easy. It truly isn't. So, they must have a good reason, and I think if they do have the evidence, then they should be able to like actually turn that and show what they want. So that is what we're looking at with that. So, you know, Biden officially is the winner. I was personally wrong with my prediction. I thought the president was going to end up narrowly edging it out. That did not end up being the case, but yeah. MJ Daniel, the Democrats can still win the Senate. Well, that is not true. I think they still do have that possibility, but those two races in Georgia are probably going to end up going to the Republicans, especially because those are special elections and turnout amongst like minorities that really supported the Democrats in Georgia. That might not be as high. So, you know, that's what we're seeing right there. So, yeah. I mean, this presidential race has been like very different to what we're seeing, and it's been very very different to what we from what we're seeing. If there's evidence that there's voter fraud, will you make a video about it? So no, at this point in time, it depends. If there is evidence of voter fraud and it's gonna have a big impact on the election, I'm definitely going to make a video on it without a shadow of a doubt. Now, if it's something like there is some evidence of voter fraud, but the impact on the election is going to be minimal to none, I mean, no, I'm not going to make a video about it because if truly like the impact on the election is nothing, and here's the thing, there is probably cases of voter fraud out there. Now the question is, to what extent? Is it going to be something that's going to be huge? Is it going to be very big amounts of voter fraud cases, like who knows, a thing that could flip states by 20,000 votes, something like that? Or are we looking at a race that is going to be by a little bit less? Because like the question becomes, but how much voter fraud is there? Because during every election, there is no vote. There is voter fraud. Um, it's just very small cases. So that's what we're seeing right now there, and it's something that we definitely have to take a look at during this election. And you know you're gonna have to accept the results if you're a Trump supporter. At this point in time, it looks like the Democrats have won the race. So Trump supporters out there, just accept the results for what they are. The same way that the Democrats in 2016 somewhat ended up accepting the results, because truly they really did it in a way, because in 2016 you also have to consider that there was a big movement after to like not call Trump your president, all that. So I hope our country, and I hope the Republicans can be more mature about this than the Democrats were back when they lost. I seriously do hope that there's not going to be a Biden is not my president movement, as we have to think about the United States. So, you know, that is what we really have to think. At this point in time, there's a very small chance that the election results have changed. And even with faceless electors, which I mean, it's become very hard to do that. And truly faithless electors only really affect the like a couple of electoral votes. If the difference was 20 electoral votes, perhaps maybe the difference we could see there. But in time, I think that um the difference is like a little bit it's a little bit too much for them to be making up with faithless electors, just basing it off of what we currently have from this election. So, I think at this point in time, it's fair to say that Biden is the official winner, and that Donald Trump, he had a fair shot at the presidency. I mean, it was tough. I mean, he was dealing with a global pandemic. He was leading with these things, and at the end of the day, it didn't end up working out for Trump. And it just ends up being that this was a tough election for President Trump, and it was something that he really really had to fight. So now the question also becomes, where are we seeing the Republicans make inroads? I mean, the Republicans truly have started to make a lot of more connections with some sort of voters. I mean, it is, if we take a look at states. I mean, take a look at Florida, take a look at Ohio. These states are moving away from the swing state factor, moving him into more of a factor of states that are just slightly red. That is what we're currently seeing with this election and with the president and Joe Biden. So I think at this point in time that the Democratic Party is moving away from these states, and those things are becoming more and more clear. And as of now, the results are what they are, and Biden has officially been elected president of the United States. This is a rather historic moment because going to be the oldest president, and it also becomes rather historic in the sense that in the sense that Kamala Harris is going to be the first woman to become vice president of the United States. She's going to become the first woman or the first African American, or she's not African American. It depends how you look at it. There's a big debate about that, but she's the first person of one of the first people of color going into the vice presidency office. And that is a big moment in American history. So whether you support Biden and Harris or not, I think you just have to acknowledge this is a historical moment. And I think at this point in time, Biden is the president. You disagree with him, respect him, and he is your president at this point in time. He is President-elect Joe Biden at this point. And I mean, we're going to be looking into a Biden White House within the next couple of months as this transition goes. I really want to see how this transition goes. Is it going to be one that's going to be very peaceful? And again, this transition is different to those that we've seen in the past. Because remember, this is the loser of the election transitioning with the winner. That's like what makes a weird dynamic there. I mean, when Barack Obama, when he was transitioning to President Trump, it was a little bit less awkward because it wasn't like you beat me in the election. So we also want to see how that process goes. I really want to see if it's going to be peaceful. I really want to see how it's going to turn out, because that might just be very awkward as they start kind of changing all of that information and moving into the other person's White House. So I mean, we're looking at a presidential race and at a president that right now that becomes uncertain. So that is what we're looking at there right now. Harris is a South Indian like me. She's gonna do great. That's one thing that I don't understand about Kamala Harris. When she ran for Senate in California, she really went on that she's an American Indian. Because again, in California, that's a big part of the population. That's a big minority there. But when she runs for president, that's like no longer valid to her, and it's probably not going to help her out politically. So she changes the narrative, and apparently she becomes African American. So I think that like in general, I think it's very it changes a lot. So you think this bias before? I think you're very biased right now, LTP. I mean, it's looking like that anyway. I'm gonna say that like at this point in time, Biden Harris did not win this election because they pushed hard. They didn't win this election, I mean, because they really fought hard for it. It just happened to be that, I mean, the election kind of fell on their lap if you think about it. Donald Trump was unpopular, simply and to put it frankly. And that general unpopularity is what really helped Biden and Harris achieve this victory when it comes to the Electoral College. So yeah, I mean, at this point, that is what we're looking with this election. Biden has officially been elected president of the United States, and I'm going to be doing a lot of coverage on regular videos now. So if you guys are not yet subscribed and you really guys want to check out my latest content from this election, where I would be talking about kind of the results and going in depth in each individual state and talk about what happened in each individual state and why people won in the race. And we have a lot of interesting videos coming out soon. And there's some very interesting videos coming out today. So please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you guys are notified when all of that happens. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this live stream. This was a very quick live stream. It was only like half an hour, but I really enjoyed talking to you guys. And now we officially know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will lead our country at least for the next 4 years. So yeah, I mean, guys, hope you enjoyed.